Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes, you are.
Okay, apologies. From here, I'm having some network glitch. So I welcome you all once again to this session of our ongoing research methodology workshop on behalf of the Executive and the Supreme Congress of the Association of Resident Doctors. My name is Dr. Salih Shuaibu. I am a Senior Registrar, Department of Community Medicine, Usman Danfodio University Teaching Hospital, as well as the Assistant General Secretary of the Association of Resident Doctors, UDUTH Sokoto. I will be your moderator for this session. I think our facilitator is on the call now. You are welcome, sir. Before we proceed further, I would like us to know who is our facilitator this evening. Well, our facilitator is not any other person. He is Professor Habibullah Adamu. Ideally, I wanted to request for his citation, but I deliberately didn't request for it because I know what I will have is something that I might not be able to read it. Yeah, time might not permit, and I might not be able to even summarize it for us to take it within few minutes. And even AI might not be able to summarize his citation for us to take it within 1 minute. So I've known Professor Habibullah Adamu for the past 10 years. He is not any other person than he happened to be, I'm privileged that he happened to be my undergraduate project supervisor. And still, currently, he is also my postgraduate part 2 dissertation supervisor. He bagged his MBBS, diploma in civic law, and master in public health from Usman Danfodio University, Sokoto. He's a fellow of West African College of Physicians. He's a professor with the university, that is the University Usman Danfodio University, Sokoto, as well as a consultant public health physician at Usman Danfodio University Teaching Hospital. Professor Habibullah Adamu, he is married, happily married with children. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the few things that I personally know that I wanted to share with our dear participants this evening. And without any further ado, I will hand over to our facilitator, Professor Habibullah Adamu, to take us through development and validation of questionnaire this evening. There's no doubt we will all end up creating questionnaire to collect our data during our part 2 dissertation. So, and this topic is very important for us to know how this questionnaire are designed and how we can validate them. So, Prof, over to you, sir.
So Salu, I was happy when you said you were not going to read any citation because I said, thank God, because it is not a ceremonial event, it is an academic event. So there is no point going, but then you started. But having said that, I think we should just move straight into the business of the day. So good evening, all.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm trying to share the slide. Please, can you see the slide?
Sir.
Can you see the slide?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay, very good. Good evening. Like the moderator said, my name is Habibullah Adamu. I'm in the Department of Community Medicine of Usman Danfodiyo University and the Teaching Hospital. So this evening, by God's grace, I'm going to guide you through an overview of development and validation of a questionnaire. The term questionnaire is something you are all used to, and I'm sure at least a significant cross-section of the participants here have had cause to develop a questionnaire before, either as undergraduate students or currently as residents while doing their residency. So what we are going to do is to give an overview of how to develop and validate a questionnaire. Survey-based studies are abundant, not only in medical field, but even in social and psychological and behavioral research. So in these studies, questionnaires are often used as the research tools to collect various informations of interest. Therefore, there is need to understand how a questionnaire should be designed, because a well-designed questionnaire is crucial in determining the quality and the merits of any survey that is conducted. If a questionnaire lacks merit or validity, the conclusion drawn from the findings of that research are going to be scientifically questionable. So questionnaire is an instrument, like we know, that is used for the purpose of collecting data from respondents, usually in a systematic manner. Why is it systematic? Because usually questionnaire is expected to be structured, collecting information as the specific objectives suggest. So designing a questionnaire requires proper planning. And this is to ensure that relevant questions and items are considered in a way that relates to the specific constructs or the specific objectives of the research. Once a questionnaire has been designed, there is another crucial step that is very, very important, which is to be able to what? Ensure that that questionnaire can actually seek the information that the research is seeking to answer. So that means a questionnaire is expected to be valid. So because a questionnaire is expected to be valid, it means whenever you design a questionnaire, there is need to what? Validate it, so that you are sure the questionnaire can actually collect relevant information that is related to your specific objective. So a rigorous systematic approach must therefore be followed while designing a questionnaire, and also in order to validate such questionnaire. So today, this evening, we are going to look at the steps in designing a questionnaire. We'll look at the various types of questionnaire, how they are classified, the steps, the do's and the don'ts, and finally, how to evaluate the questionnaire to be sure that the questionnaire can actually provide us with the necessary information that will answer our specific objectives. So questionnaire is classified based on different criteria. You can decide to classify a questionnaire based on the method of method of the questionnaire administration, how you choose to administer the questionnaire. So questionnaire here, we are going to see various types of questionnaire based on this criteria, based on the method of administration. It can also be classified based on the types of questions that how the questions are actually coined in the questionnaire, or based on the purpose of the questionnaire. There are other classifications that are often used in scientific research. So based on the method of administration, a questionnaire can be classified as either self-administered questionnaire or interviewer-administered questionnaire, or even online. Now that with technology, we have online questionnaire, so we are going to look at each of them. Self-administered questionnaire, as the name suggests, it means it is a questionnaire that you give to this participant, to the study participant, for him or for her to respond to the questions that are contained therein. So that means in a self-administered questionnaire, you don't need an intert. You need is design your questionnaire and give it to whoever is your target population, and the person is going to respond to it. So there are different types of questionnaires. Here we have several online questionnaires that are designed and deployed online. Some, the links are sent for participants to open and respond. And there are also the paper-based, even though now attention is actually moving away from the paper-based questionnaire. So it has advantage of being usually inexpensive, because a single person can actually collect data from 500 people or even 1,000 people, because all he needs is to what? Administer, just give them the questionnaire. It is for them to fill and return, or send them the link to the questionnaire. So you can send a link to 1 million people for them to respond and return your questionnaire and submit within 1 hour. So it is generally inexpensive and it is fast. And issue of anonymity is also there, because once you distribute several questionnaires to your study participants, the name is not captured. You are not there when they respond to your questionnaire, so you don't even know who is responding to which questionnaire. So participants feel more free to actually respond, especially where there are questions that are a bit heavy, questions that relate to maybe social issues. So it helps to reduce social desirability bias, because someone knows that whoever is responding knows that you don't even have idea of who is making that particular response. However, there are limitations. One of such limitation is that it depends on one's ability to be able to read and understand the questions in the questionnaire. So for you to be able to just send a questionnaire to someone for him to fill, definitely he is expected to be literate enough to be able to read the question and also understand it. So this is a limitation. Where your study participants are essentially illiterate, this is not a reliable method of administering a questionnaire. And then of course also issue of non-response. Sometimes, responding to questionnaire is not an easy thing. It's for so many people, especially where some questionnaires are designed in a way, because some people design their questionnaire, if you look at it, you think it's a question paper. So usually what a lot of people do, if they are not comfortable with the questions, they will just, if it's a paper-based questionnaire, they will just answer the first page, which is usually social demographic characteristics, and then fold it and return it. So all the other sections that are addressing your specific objectives, by the time you retrieve your questionnaire back, you realize there is no response there. So it's associated with a lot of non-response. And sometimes even because some people will tell you, okay, give us the questionnaire, come back later and collect. You'll never see such questionnaires again. So that is why part of the limitation is that it's associated with a lot of non-response and sometimes missing data. The other one is interviewer-administered questionnaire. So this one, as the name suggests, the questionnaire is administered by the interviewer. So that means it is the research assistant that will meet the study participant and then read the question. Each of the questions in the questionnaire will be read by the research assistant, and then the respondent will respond. Then the research assistant will look at the appropriate response in the questionnaire and either tick it or cycle as the instruction implies. So it is usually conducted face-to-face or via phone. It can be actually administered via phone. One of the advantages of this type of questionnaire is that it enables one to clarify doubts. So where a respondent is not clear with certain questions, he can actually ask the interviewer. Or the interviewer, if he's an experienced interviewer, from the way the respondent, from the facial gestures, he will pick, he will have idea on whether the respondent actually understands the question or not. So it has higher response rate because it is administered by the interviewer. So response rate is likely going to be higher. However, it has also its own limitation because there is interviewer bias. Sometimes the interviewer might tend to ask some questions deeper than some questions. So it introduces bias. And there is also response bias, especially on issues that have some social implication. Maybe there is a question on cigarette smoking or alcohol consumption, and you ask the study participants, and he looks at you, no, even if he smokes, he will look at you and say, no, I cannot tell him I smoke. So he will lie and say, no, he doesn't smoke, even though he actually smokes. So response bias has been introduced. So interviewer-administered questionnaire is associated with higher response bias than self-administered, where you know that no one is looking at you, and once you respond, there is no way your response can be actually tied to you as a person. And it's more time consuming because it is the interviewer that the research assistant that will have to interview everybody. So it depends on the technical expertise, the experience of the interviewer, and it is cost intensive because you have to pay the research assistant, or at least you are expected to pay the research assistant. Sometimes you have to hire so many research assistants if your target population, the sample size is quite high. So the third type is web-based or electronic questionnaire. Now, these types of questionnaires are now replacing the paper-based questionnaires. So, and questionnaires can be delivered through mails. If you have email address of your study participants, you can just send it to their email for them to open, respond. So you can send just the link to the questionnaire. Mobile apps, sometimes through mobile apps. So you forward it via WhatsApp group or someone, or via Facebook. You just send the link. People will click, follow, and then respond. Survey platforms such as Google Forms, RedCap, SurveyMonkeys, there are a lot of them that are currently used to collect real-time information. One of the advantages is that it is cost-effective because you don't need to print any paper. Even if your study population is 1 million, all you need is send it. So if it is WhatsApp, the number of your followers determines the number of people that will have access to it. If it is via WhatsApp group, Telegram groups, and so on and so forth. So That is one advantage, and the data entry is easy. You just click. It is using your phone. So you just be clicking and be swiping to the next page. And even analysis is easier. A lot of them, you can even do real-time analysis. As the survey is ongoing, as people are submitting and submitting, you can see what is happening, even while people are submitting. So this is one of the advantages. However, it has limitation because some of them rely on internet connection. In fact, eventually all will rely on internet. There are some that can actually be filled even if you are offline, but then you cannot submit the data to the server unless you connect to the internet. So that is why, at least where there is no internet or the data service is actually weak, then it is actually going to pose a limitation. And low response rate. I'm sure a lot of us have seen links to various questionnaires posted to various WhatsApp groups that we belong to. How many of us have actually bothered to click the link and respond to the questionnaire? So response rate is usually low because you know that someone is not looking at you. Or maybe by the time you send it, you do not have data, or even if you have data, but you did not go online to where the link is posted for you to see. And by the time you open it, probably the data collection period will have elapsed. So all these contribute to the low response rate. Then the other method of classification is by the type of question. So questionnaire can also be classified based on how the questions are actually structured within the questionnaire. So we have structured questionnaire, unstructured, and semi-structured. Structured questionnaire, the responses, each question is accompanied by predetermined responses. The responses that you generally expect from your respondents, you put them, so it's just for the respondent to click. So example is yes or no. Have you ever heard of family planning before? Some questionnaires, on the other hand, are the questionnaires that have open-ended questions, meaning that the questions are just there, but there is no response, no option for one to select. For example, when you ask, what are the main challenges you face in accessing healthcare? And you are asking 10 people, each of these 10 people can respond in various response. Someone will give you just one line of response. So it will allow someone to actually give you all the detailed information. So is because there is no restriction to the amount of data someone can actually provide. So it's part of the advantages of this type of questionnaire. Because it provides reach. The limitation is that during analysis, this type of questionnaires are actually difficult to analyze because you are going to get different types of responses, even though the responses might be the same, but the software computer will see it as different response. For example, you might decide to, I'm sorry, several calls are coming in and I'm using hotspot. So you realize probably the thing will be cutting. So for example, when you ask Have you ever heard? Someone can just tell you, yes, of course. Say, I have heard of it before. All this, the answer is the same. All they are saying is, yes, they have heard of it. But because the words that are contained in their responses are different, the computer is going to see them as different responses. So this type of situation usually poses difficulty in analysis. So sometimes you have to do coding and subcoding in order to actually analyze it. So analysis is usually the difficult part of. So as much as possible, unless you have to, if you are conducting a quantitative research, it's better to move away from unstructured questionnaire, because during analysis, you are likely going to have more difficult. It's not like it cannot be analyzed, but the analysis is more difficult. And then semi-structured questionnaire. So this one combines open and close-ended question. So this one is one that people mostly use. So you can just add, where you provide option, you can add part of the option, one of the options to be what? Open-ended. For example, where you are collecting information about tribe. So you put tribe, okay, it's Hausa, Igbo, Yoruba, Nupe, Fulani, and so on. Because you know you cannot exhaust all the other tribes, so you cannot provide options for them. You can just put others. Then you now put specify. So that specify has now opened it, because if you can get several hundreds of responses depending on the tribes of the respondents that are actually responding to your questionnaire. So semi-structured, this is where semi-structured questionnaire is actually useful. And then you can classify questionnaire also by content or the purpose of that questionnaire. So based on this, you can have attitude questionnaires if your questionnaire is simply focusing on determining the attitude of your study participants. We have behavioral or practice questionnaire. We even have KAP questionnaires. KAP questionnaires are assessing knowledge, attitude, and practice. So generally, they are referred to as KAP questionnaires. And then there are standardized questionnaires that have been designed, standardized, and released for people to adopt for their own research. Examples of this standardized questionnaire is the WHO QOL, that means the WHO Quality of Life questionnaire. So if you are assessing quality of life of your patient, WHO Quality of Life questionnaire is that there are different types. The most comprehensive one is the QOL 100, because it has up to 100 questions with different domains of quality of life. The PHQ 9 also is another example of standardized. That is patient health questionnaire. This questionnaire is used for assessing depression among usually a community-based in community-based setting. So if you are assessing depression, PHQ questionnaire, the questionnaire is there with standardized way of doing its analysis and the rest of it. So these are various ways by which questionnaire can be actually classified. Now let's move into the main focus of why we are gathering this evening. Now, what are the general considerations to be made before designing a questionnaire? First, you have to decide on the type of questions that is it, on the type of questionnaire, sorry, whether it is a self-administered questionnaire you want to design or whether it is a structured questionnaire, because it determines how you are going to coin your question. You also have to determine the target group, whether your target group is literate or illiterate, because it determines how you are going to also put your questions. If your target group is literate, you know, you can even use maybe some grammars that are not so heavy, even though usually use of unnecessary grammar is discouraged if you are designing questionnaire. And then you also need to determine your resources. All the resources that you have available. If you have the resources and you feel you have the ability to design, print so many papers, fine. You know, if you have the ability to provide people with data, Android devices, as the case may be, fine. So all this will determine the type of questionnaire, whether you are going to use online questionnaire or questionnaire that is not online, and then method of analysis. Always, this is very, very important. Please, before you design any questionnaire, any question you want to include in your questionnaire, always think of analysis. Think of how you are going to do the analysis of that question. Because failure to do that might cause difficulties. Sometimes you collect data that you only realize that this data cannot even be analyzed during analysis. And maybe you have collected data from over 500 people, maybe over a period of several months. That is going to be a disaster. So let's look at the general format of a questionnaire. So a normal questionnaire is expected to have certain things that are there, which are generally present in all normal standardized questionnaire. The first, from the top to bottom, is the affiliation. That questionnaire, the affiliation of the person doing the research, if it's an individual or a group of persons. So whether it's an institution or organization. So it means if you are designing your questionnaire as a resident, the name of your institution is expected to appear at the top. So teaching hospital. If it is an organization you are working for, then the name of that organization that is sponsoring that research should be there. So that is the affiliation. Sometimes you just see the logo. If it's WHO, sometimes you see WHO logo. UNICEF will have their own logo. Each institution have their own logo also, but at least the name should be there. Then just below the affiliation is the title of the questionnaire. Every questionnaire is expected to have a title. Don't just design a questionnaire and just put your questions there. And the respondent doesn't even know what the questionnaire is all about, what the information he is providing is going to be useful. So there should be a title there. Then below the title is the consent statement. Even though there is going to be a consent form that is detailed enough, then there should also be what consent statement for every questionnaire that introduces whoever is doing the research and then the main aim of that research and a few words of what a few words of confidentiality. Yes, that the respondent is free to respond or not to respond, and the information that is going to be sought from him is going to be handled with confidentiality, and then the consent statement should also be there. Do you agree to participate? Yes, no. So every questionnaire should have this. This is a mandatory requirement. Then below the consent statement is the questionnaire identifiers. Things that will help you identify each questionnaire. So these questionnaire identifiers will include the questionnaire number. So questionnaires are expected to be numbered so that you can make reference to a particular questionnaire. Even during data cleaning, you can actually, it helps when the questionnaire is numbered, and it also helps sometimes to know who actually administered the questionnaire. The interviewer ID. If you are conducting a research whereby it is interviewer administered, so you recruit 5 research assistants that will help you administer the questionnaire, then you should be able to trace each questionnaire submitted to a particular research assistant. So if there is any problem, either poor quality or whatever it is, something you need to seek clarification, you know who administered that particular questionnaire. So that is why interviewer ID is very, very important. So you should always include it. Date. Sometimes there are some researches that also deals with date. So this one is not going to be applicable to all type of data collection, but it's part of the things. So all these, there are so many other things, but the major ones, the questionnaire number, interviewer ID, and perhaps maybe the date and any other relevant thing. And then the next will be what? List of questions. Now the variables usually arranged section by section. Each section addressing a particular specific objective. Usually that is, so if you have 4 specific objectives, it is expected that usually section A will be social demographic characteristics. So that one is by default. Whatever your specific objectives are, the first thing is expected that you will collect information on the social demographic characteristics. So you have to include it there. Just like when you are clerking, you have to start with biodata. Whatever the patient is presenting with, you don't want to know, but at least the biodata must be there first. So for questionnaire also is the same thing. You need to get what is it called? The social demographic characteristics of your respondent. So the questions there should be section by section, each section addressing a specific objective. And then at the end, appreciation. Just a simple statement. Thank you for your time. Thank you for responding to our questionnaire. Whatever it is, you should appreciate your study participant for responding. So this slide is just showing you a practical example. You can see the format, the affiliation is there. That is Usman Danfodio University, Sokoto, then followed by the title, questionnaire on adverse events following COVID-19, then followed by the consent statement that is there, describing what the researcher is doing, and then the consent statement, whether the person agrees to participate or not, and then the date of data collection, and then questionnaire number that shows the questionnaire identifier, and then section A, social demographic. So when you go through the other sections of the questionnaire, you see that they are addressing questions that are specific, that are related to the specific objectives of your research. So let's look at the steps in designing a questionnaire. The first thing there is you need to outline the specific objectives. That is the first thing. You must have your specific objective. If you don't have specific objective, you cannot design a questionnaire. You know, even if you are able to design it, that questionnaire is not going to be good enough. Then the second thing is to determine your literature sources. So where are you going to get the questions that you are going to put in your questionnaire? So that is where you now consult widely. You go to the internet, you search for article, you want to Google, you Google. You can ask AI to help you with articles that are related to, so you can even tell AI, give AI the actual prompts. You are conducting a research on so please kindly help me search for questions, blah, blah, or researches that will help me in developing my own questionnaire. So you have informed it, it is going to get, in fact, if there is a standardized questionnaire, it can get you, can tell you, oh, this thing you want to research on, there is a standardized questionnaire. WHO has a standardized questionnaire that you can either adapt or adopt. So when you search, you find out. Sometimes you need to go to textbooks in order to know certain things, maybe clinical features of something, because you yourself do not know and you want to include it in your questionnaire. So you go to textbook. You can look for previous projects that are related to what you are working on. If you are lucky, you even see a questionnaire that has most of the questions that will also be relevant for your own study. So you can adapt and reference it. Dissertations as well. You can also seek for expert opinion, your supervisors. Someone you give your supervisor can say, you didn't include so question on this now, so question, and they are relevant to your objective. So your supervisor can actually make meaningful additions. Even colleagues, your colleagues can make additions. So when you are developing questionnaire, you have to consult widely. And sometimes you have to conduct interview if you don't have idea of what you should even ask. So you can conduct a qualitative research where you interview people or you engage them in a focus group discussion. From their responses, you can now have idea of the questions you are going to include in your questionnaire. So you also need to what? The third thing is to structure your questionnaire according to your specific objectives. Like we say, usually the first section, which is section A or section 1, looks at the social demographic characteristics. Then section B, section C, the next objective, section D, the next objective, and so on and so forth. So you just put them, section A like that, like that. Then the next is now to come back under each section. You now itemize all the questions that you believe will be able to answer that objective. So you provide options where needed, questions that maybe your first objective, for example, is to determine the awareness and knowledge of family planning. So you now come under that section, you list all the questions that you are going to ask. Okay, the first question I need to first of all ask whether someone has even ever heard of family planning. Okay, have you ever heard of family planning? Yes, no. Okay, I need to know the sources of information. Okay, if yes, what are the sources of your information? Okay, since it is knowledge, okay, what are the various types of family planning? So you now put all the questions that you believe will answer that specific objective. Then you move to the next section also. You now, because that next section is also trying to address another specific objective, so you itemize all the questions that you believe will answer that objective. And that is why I said you need to consult widely. Because by the time you make wise consultations, you will know the questions that you are supposed to put under each section. Then you need to rearrange so that the questions flow in a logical order. For example, you want to look at awareness, section B, for example, let's say is on awareness and knowledge of family planning. You know, it will not make meaningful sense for when you start with what are your sources of family planning, question 1. Then question 2, have you ever heard of family planning? It is not following a logical order. It is expected that you will ask about the awareness first, then the source of awareness, then what they know about it. So that is the logical order that this bullet is actually talking about. And then you need to apply also skip logic where applicable. This helps you in making sure that all the data that you have relevant data, and then it avoids unnecessary waste of time. For example, you want to ask about, you ask, have you ever heard of family planning? Yes, no. And the person says, no, he has never heard of it. So there is no need to ask him what are your sources of information. So that means that question should be what? Linked to a skip logic so that it will not even appear or be asked. So you can just, if it is paper-based questionnaire, you can just put in bracket instruction. If no, skip to question so that the respondent will not even waste his time answering, and you will not end up collecting information that is not important to you as far as your objective is concerned. Then after doing that, once you are sure all the questions that you need to answer your objectives are inputted in your questionnaire, the next thing is you need to pretest that questionnaire to be sure that that questionnaire can actually collect the information you are interested in. So you can administer it to a small cross-section of a population. Usually, it is not expected that it will be the actual study population you are going to work on. If you are pretesting, you pretest it on a population that has similar characteristics to those who you want to study. For example, maybe you want to study the opinion of something among medical students. You can do your pretest among student nurses, or maybe among medical students in a public school. I mean, in a tertiary, in a federal government university. You can do your pretest in a state university if there is a state university there, because they are similar to your study population. However, they are not the same study population. Why you want to avoid using the same study population is because you don't want to give them clue as to the questions that will be asked. If it is question related to knowledge, by the time you do it, they will go and read about it and then come back. So it is going to give you a biased information. So the pretest also assesses clarity. It gives you idea of the time that you are going to take in order to administer a single questionnaire. Sometimes that is where you know whether the questionnaire is too lengthy or not. It is when you pretest. So this pretest and pilot study, people use them interchangeably. Actually, they are not the same. Pretest is just you pretesting a component of your own study. What you are studying, I mean, the study instrument. So you can decide to just test your questionnaire, or you test your study participants, or you test the software you want to use for your, all these constitute pretest. However, the commonest thing usually pretested in a research is the questionnaire. But pilot survey or pilot study is when you conduct your whole study on a small group of people. So instead of you to just pretest the questionnaire, you decide, oh, in fact, let me administer the questionnaire, let me enter the data, let me do analysis, let me bring out the results in tables, charts, and everything. So when you do that, and you are able to answer each objective, then you have comprehensively looked at the feasibility of your research. So that is pilot study. So people prefer pilot study. If you have the resources, do a pilot study. Because your questionnaire might be okay, but maybe the software you want to use for analysis cannot even analyze the data. So you will not know. But when you conduct a pilot study, because it entails everything, you will be able to see whether you even be able to analyze it or not. Even if you have the software, it is possible around where you live, no one can actually do the analysis. You will not know until it gets to that point. So when you do a pilot study, because it also involves analysis, you'll be able to see whether you are going to need services of someone else or not. So that is the basic difference between pilot study and pretest. Then you revise based on the feedback. Usually after a pretest or pilot study, usually there is a few modifications that is done to either the questionnaire or the methodology that you propose to use. So what are these some important considerations that you need to, some do's and don'ts when designing a questionnaire? First of all, we say the questionnaire should be arranged serially. So even if you have 5 sections, arrange your questionnaire serially. Question 1, question 2, question 3. If section A ends at question 5, when you enter section B, don't start from 1 again. Just continue 6, question 7. When you enter the next section, continue like that. So that during analysis, there will not be confusion. You have question 1 here, you have question 1, then you start thinking, which of the question 1, which one is for section B and which one is for section C? Even though some of the software that you are going to use, some are designed in such a way that it will not allow that to happen. For example, SPSS will not allow you to have the same questionnaire the same variable name, for example. So it's always important, arrange it in series. You should also start with the straightforward questions. Questions that are not ambiguous, questions that are just straightforward, simple questions. Questions that are a bit technical or a bit heavy because the information they are seeking is something that maybe have some social desirability issues, reserve them towards the end. Maybe questions on whether someone smokes, whether someone consumes alcohol, whether someone is having extramarital sex. Leave them towards the end so that even if you provoke your study participant, at least you will have collected all the other relevant questions. But when you start with that one, you set the person off and you may not get the desired responses. So that is why you should start with the simple, straightforward questions whenever you are designing your questionnaire. You should ensure that all questions under each sections are clearly addressing a specific objective. So that's why, because we said that the questionnaire should be designed section by section. So in each section, if, for example, section B is seeking knowledge of family planning, for example, so all the questions that you are going to put under that section should be questions that are what? Assessing knowledge of family planning and nothing more. So that is the meaning of this bullet. And then each question should be what? Very clear and simple. Please don't make your questionnaire as if you are asking exam. Just trying to confuse your respondent. So in the end, you might end up assessing your respondent's understanding of your questionnaire rather than assessing what you are actually trying to assess. So that's why your questions, please let it be very clear and simple so that whatever response you are getting, you know that it is response to that question you are asking. You should avoid ambiguous questions. What are examples of this ambiguous question? For example, you say, do you go to toilet a lot? Which one is a lot? To someone, he is used to going to toilet 2 times every day. To someone, he is used to going to toilet 3 times every day or 4 times every day. So when you say a lot, even though he goes to toilet 3 times every day, he might tell you no. To someone, he usually goes to toilet once a day. So once you say a lot, even going to toilet 2 times in a day, he might see it as something strange. So if you say, do you go to toilet a lot? He will tell you yes. So that is why you should avoid questions that have some ambiguity. Let your question be what? Very clear. You should avoid unnecessary terminologies in your questionnaire also. Example, e.g., Madam, do you have hyperemesis gravidarum? So this one is, so even if she is vomiting excessively, maybe it's a pregnant woman, for example, you are clerking, and you ask, do you have hyperemesis gravidarum? She might think it is one big diagnosis, and she will tell you no. She will tell you no. Or if it's self-administered, she will just, and you put yes, no, she will just select no, even though she might be vomiting excessively. So as a result of her pregnancy. So that is why it is important to avoid unnecessary terminologies and jargons. Jargons that are for medical consumption, let it remain within the medical field when colleagues are discussing. Or if it's questionnaire, everything should be straightforward. Avoid undefined abbreviations and acronyms. So any abbreviation you want to use in questionnaire, write it in full first, then you put the abbreviation in bracket. Then subsequently, you can use it. At least it will have been introduced to the participants. For example, you say awareness of PCV. So, to someone reading this PCV, is it part cell volume that you want to assess, or is it, for example, pneumococcal conjugate vaccine. All of them are PCV, and they are two different things. And it depends on the respondent, whichever one comes to the respondent's mind first. So that is why it is very important to whatever you want to say, write it in full, then you write it in bracket. Then subsequently, you can use it. You should also provide clear explanation at the beginning of each section. This is very important. So you say section A, this section is assessing your knowledge of so. Kindly cycle the correct response, or kindly tick, or kindly write. Whatever it is, please always write, give the explanation. Why there is need for explanation, explain. Why there is need for simple instruction, please always give instruction. Don't assume that your respondent knows what you are referring to. No, it doesn't always go that way. Options to each question should be what? Mutually exclusive. Yes, if you have responses that are in categories, then each category should be what? Mutually exclusive. There shouldn't be a cause for a response to fall in two categories. For example, where you decide, for example, to categorize age, even though it is not advisable, as we are going to see. If you categorize, okay, age, you now put 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50. So the first category is 20 to 30. 30 is there. The second category is 30 to 40. 30 is there. And the patient's age is 30. So which one is he going to select? Is it the first one or the second one? So there is going to be problem there because, why? Because the options are not mutually exclusive. So the options should be what? Mutually exclusive, meaning that you cannot be in two categories at the same time. So that is, so please, whenever you are designing a questionnaire, you should always consider this. The option should be what? Mutually exclusive. Avoid spelling mistakes. That means you must proofread your questionnaire. No matter how much in a hurry you are, you have to proofread your questionnaire so that you avoid spelling mistakes. Some spelling mistakes can change the meaning of what you are assessing completely. For example, you want to write public health, and then you write pubic health. That L that is missing has now changed the whole thing. So it's very, very important. Questions and variables seeking quantitative responses, e.g. age, should be what? Left uncategorized. So if you are seeking someone's age, please don't put it in your questionnaire 20 to 30, 31, 21 to 30, 31 to 40, 41 to, don't do it that way. Just leave space for someone to write his actual age. If the age is 31, let him put 31. The next respondent, if the age is 40, let him put 40. There is no need to categorize it, because the danger is if you categorize it on your questionnaire, then during analysis, if you want to recategorize it to another grouping, you are going to have problem. You cannot do it because the question is already, your information was sought in a categorized manner. So, but when you leave it open during analysis, you can regroup it to any number of categories you like. There is no problem with that. Or even BMI. So any quantitative variable, those ones, the continuous ones, please don't categorize it on your questionnaire. Just leave space and collect it raw. During analysis, you can do whatever you want to do with it. Do not join two or more sentences in one question. So each question should be what? Specific. Don't join two questions and then you give option yes, no. So if someone selects yes, that yes is to which of the questions? Is it the first part of the question or to the second part of the question? So that is why each question should be what? Stand alone. Don't join. Each variable should have what? Single question that is specifically asking about one single thing. Avoid leading questions. Leading questions are questions that suggest the response you expect from someone. So we know what this means. So please, if you are putting your questions in a questionnaire, as much as possible, do not suggest the answer to your question, to your respondent, because some respondents, especially if it is interviewer administered, and the question is coined in a way that clearly it suggests the response you are expecting from someone, then he's just going to look at your face and give you what you are expecting. And that would bias the actual response. So now that we know how to design a questionnaire, we said it during the introductory part, that designing is just one part. However, that questionnaire needs to be what? Valid. It means that the questionnaire we are designing must be able to answer what we want to answer. So that comes under the subject of what? Evaluation. That means each questionnaire you design, before you deploy it for use on the field, you have to what? Evaluate it. And usually you evaluate it for two things. You evaluate it for its validity, and you also evaluate it for its reliability. So validity tests the accuracy of the questionnaire. The questions that are included in your questionnaire, how accurate are they in seeking the information that will answer the specific objectives? And then reliability has to do with consistency of the questions. So when you administer the same questions, are you likely going to get the same response from your respondent? So that is the issue of validity and reliability. So within the next remaining minutes that we have, those are the things we are going to look at. So validity in questionnaire evaluation is what? A process of ensuring that a questionnaire measures what it is intended to measure. So how is the questionnaire able to measure what you intend the questionnaire to measure accurately? So that is what validity is looking at. So without validity, findings may be biased, because it means the questionnaire is going to be asking, collecting information that is not related to your specific objective. So it might be inconsistent, it might be what? Misleading at times, depending on how the questions are coined. So validation is a continuous process. As you design your questionnaire, you test the validity. If it is not okay, you modify it, you test again until you get something that is considered okay, which is what we are going to see. So there are different ways of testing validity of a questionnaire. The first, which is the basic one, is the first validity. This one is just the extent to which your questionnaire appears on the surface when someone looks at it, without subjecting it to any statistical test or so. How okay does the questionnaire look? There are some questionnaires that once you look at them, you know that this questionnaire is not likely to be okay. Even the formatting is bad. The questions, the way the questions are not even structured. You are seeing question one, by the time you look at one question, the next question that is following is related to something else. So you know that, on the face value, the questionnaire doesn't look good. So usually you ask experts. Once you design your questionnaire, you can just give experts for them to just look at it and tell you what they feel about the questionnaire. So example is, if you want to measure exercise habits and you decide to ask, how many times did you exercise in the last week? So the expert might look at it and say, yes, I think this question is relevant, so it's okay. I think all the questions are related, so it looks good, because you are assessing exercise, and the question that is here is on exercise. Also, an expert might rate a questionnaire assessing attitude as not good enough, because usually an expert expects to see a questionnaire assessing attitude to have Likert scale items. Usually, attitude is assessed on a scale. So when you give an expert questionnaire and you tell him this questionnaire is on attitude of blah, 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 and he looks at the questions are just simply yes or no, yes, no, yes, no, he will tell you, no, this questionnaire is not good enough, because this is not how attitude questions are framed. So that is how face validity works. So one of the limitations is that it is subjective. It is subjective. Mr. A can look at a questionnaire and say, no, I think it looks good, it's okay. Another one will look at it and say, Kai, no, it's not good enough. So it is subjective. But usually that is the first step to follow. The next is the content validity. Now, if the face validity is okay, the questionnaire looks okay on the face value, what of the items that are contained inside the questionnaire? So this tests the extent to which a questionnaire covers all the important aspects as far as the specific objectives are concerned. We said at the beginning during design, you should put objective 1, section A, this objective, section B, this objective. So, and then the next, you list all the questions that will answer that objective. So here, content validity is looking at the questions that are answering each specific objective. Are they enough? Are they enough to be able to answer that objective? So usually it is assessed based on by looking at the content validity index or the scale validity index. Content validity index, you give experts. So usually the questions for each objective, the questions under each objective are listed. And then you make a table. You make a table with several columns. Column 1, you leave a space where the expert or the reviewer will tick. So column 1, if the question is not relevant, the expert will tick on that cell. The next column, whether it's somewhat relevant. The next, quite relevant, highly relevant. So each of these are what? Rated. So the one that is not relevant, you give it a score of 1. The one that is highly relevant, you give it a score of 5. So each of the questions that are contained in that section that are answering a specific objective, the expert will look at each of them and then rate the appropriateness and relevance of that question from 1 to 5. So 1, if he feels, no, that question is not even relevant, you just tick there. So that means for that question is getting a score of 1. So now you can have up to 6, 7, but usually the minimum number that is expected if you are doing this is that you should have at least 6 experts or more. So you give each of them the questions with the rating scale by the side. So each one of them will just look at it and select and tick and rate each of the questions. So at the end of the day, you are going to get your content validity index. And how is it assessed? It is the proportion of experts that are rating item either as 3 or 4. Anyone that is rated 1 or 2, you know that no, it's not strong enough. So what proportion of items, let's say question 1 to 5, out of the 6 experts that rate this scale, how many of them rate question 1 as either 3 or 4? So you put it there. How many rate question 2 as either 3 or 4? Because those are the ones that are going to be retained in the questionnaire. You understand? So that is how item validity index. Then there is scale validity index. Scale validity index has to do with all the questions that are answering that specific objective. So that is why it is the what? Average of all the content validity index values. We are going to see there is a table I designed in the subsequent slide that will give further explanation to this. So a content validity index of 0.78 and above is considered okay. So you can, that means your questionnaire is okay. You can, it means it will be able to what? Answer your specific objectives. The scale value, the question is okay. You don't need to modify the question. That means you can leave that question as it is. If question 1 has content validity, item validity index of 0.78, it means you don't need to modify question 1. But if, for example, you move to the next question, question 2, how is it rated? After doing everything, you see that, oh, the item validity index is actually 0.56. You know that is not acceptable. So you either have to remove it or you modify it so that the item validity index will be improved. So at the end of the day, you are going to now rate the whole scale. That means the whole questionnaire or the whole subsection in that questionnaire, which is the what? Scale validity, scale content validity index. And this one, usually it's 0.9 and above. So once you get up to that, you know that, oh, the questionnaire as a whole is okay. It can actually answer your specific objectives. So example, there is a questionnaire on maternal health service utilization rated by 7 experts. Item, for example, let's say question 1 is, how many antenatal visits did you attend? Maybe in your last pregnancy. All the 7 raters or experts select highly relevant for this. So that means the content validity index is very high, which is even 1. That means it's very, very okay. That means the item content validity index. And then, do you use herbal medicine? And for this one, 5 experts rate it as relevant out of the 7. So that means the item content validity index for that one is 0.71. So you see it's below the 0.78. That means this question is either you remove it or you modify it and then retest again to see whether the score will increase. So this is just a practical example. See where you have a questionnaire, for example, this objective, the objective this questionnaire is answering is what? Utilization of family planning. And you decide to ask how many questions? 5 questions inside. And you give it to your experts. So expert number 1 picks, he looks at it. Your first question is, during your last pregnancy, did you attend ANC? Yes, no. And he feels, no. This one, in fact, is the one answering the main objective. So he ticks 4, the column for highly relevant. And you can see the score is there, which is 4. How many times? Now, the next question asks, how many times? And the rater looks at it and say, oh, is quite relevant. However, the question is not complete. It is yes. So the rater can tick 3, and then under the comments column, he writes his own remark. Okay, add yes, add if yes, so that you will now go and modify your questionnaire. The next question, why did you deliver your last pregnancy? You see, this is related to ANC in a way. However, it is not answering that objective. So that is why it is categorized under, well, it's somewhat relevant. but look at the score of this is 2. And who delivered your last pregnancy is also somehow related to ANC, but it is not answering the objective of ANC utilization, because these two questions are assessing what? Utilization of hospital delivery services. And then look at the last question. Did you consume energy drinks in your last pregnancy? This one is not even relevant. It's not even related to utilization of family planning. So you tick 1. So this is response by one of the experts, for example. So if there are 7 experts, each expert will have his own response, and then you now collect it and aggregate it so that you now get your what? Item content validity score, and then the scale content validity score. So you can see the total score here is what? 13. The first question is 4. The second question, how many times? The score is 3 because that is where it's ticked. And then the third question, the score is 2. The fourth question, the score is also 2. And the fifth question, the score is 1. So when you add these scores, it will give you total score of 13. Now, the maximum score obtainable is 20 because there are 5 questions here, and the maximum score per question is 4, which is highly relevant. So if the rater feels all the questions are highly relevant, he is going to tick highly relevant, which is 4, 4, 4, 4. When you add for the 5 questions, it will give you maximum score of 20. So that means 5 items times maximum of what? 4 points per question. Now look at the scale content validity index. You add all the scores for each of the question is 13, all over the maximum obtainable, which is 20. And when you divide it, it will give you 0.65. So this is the what? Scale content validity index. So the conclusion is that the scale is not valid because it's just 0.65. We have seen the minimum point that is required for the scale to be considered as what? Valid. So that is how content validity index is actually, content validity of a questionnaire is assessed. The next one is construct validity. This one is just the degree to which the questionnaire actually measures the theoretical construct. That means to what extent the questionnaire is able to measure the specific objective you are interested in assessing or in determining. So what is the method? It is often tested using factor analysis or by examining relationship between variables. And here, even though there are various methods, but the commonest one is when you look at the convergent validity or the discriminant or divergent validity. So convergent validity is looking at items. This one is items measuring the same construct should ideally be what? Correlated. So if section B is assessing attitude, so it means all the questions, if there are 5 questions there assessing attitude, those questions are expected to be what? Correlated. They are expected to be related. If that section is assessing satisfaction, those questions should be what? Related to assessment of satisfaction or whatever you are interested in. For example, in a stress questionnaire, items like I feel tense and I cannot relax should have strong positive correlation because they are more or less assessing the same thing. So that is how convergent validity is. So a good questionnaire should have what? High convergent validity, meaning that items that are under the same subsection that are answering the same objective should have what? High correlation. Discriminant validity. Here, it's focusing on what? Items that are assessing different constructs. So ideally, they are not expected to be what? Correlated. For example, section B questions, Maybe section B is attitude. Section C maybe is satisfaction. So because section B, the questions there are looking at attitude, section C, the questions are looking at satisfaction, they are not expected to what? Correlate with each other. So they are expected to vary. When you run correlation, it should have low correlation. So that is discriminant validity. So questionnaires that have different sections that are not looking at the same thing, should have what? Low correlation when you are doing your evaluation. And then criterion validity. This is the extent to which questionnaire results agree with an external gold standard. So this is why you have a gold standard. That is why it is called criterion validity. And here there is concurrent validity and there is predictive validity. What happens in concurrent validity? This measures the questionnaire or the questions or the responses against a gold standard. For example, in concurrent validity, a self-reported waiting time questionnaire is validated against actual measurement of the waiting time. So for example, you go to the clinic, you are doing a research on patients waiting time, and you decide, you ask in your questionnaire, you ask the patient, for how long have you been in this clinic? Or how long did it take you to see the doctor? And you now give, someone will say 1 hour, someone will say 1 hour, 30 minutes, someone will say 2 hours, and so on and so forth. So that is what? Perceived waiting time. You are now assessing how people, the amount of time people feel they have spent in the clinic. But you can also do the actual waiting time calculation by taking note of the time someone comes to the clinic, the time it takes the person to collect or to finish the registration, the time the patient stays in the waiting area before he is called into the consulting room. So that is the actual waiting time. So in concurrent validity, you assess someone's perceived waiting time. If the validity is high, if someone says, I think I have spent 40 minutes in this clinic, by the time you compare it with the actual way, his actual waiting time that is actually measured, then there should be what? Very close correlation. It should be close to each other. Maybe the actual one should be maybe around 38 minutes or 41 minutes or 42 minutes, but not so much varying from the actual one that is. So when you have that, it tells you that, okay, maybe it is okay for you to use perceived waiting time. You can just ask your question without necessarily having to what? Measure the actual waiting time. But by the time you do it and you realize, oh, the perceived waiting time, what the patient reports, is significantly different from what is actually measured, you know that you cannot rely on that method to assess patient waiting time. So that is concurrent validity. Predictive validity, also this one deals with what? Ability of the questionnaire to predict future outcome. For example, you are recruiting your staff, and then you assess their work. When you do that, maybe after recruiting them, after 1 year or after 6 months, you can now do a what? Comprehensive assessment of their attitude and compare it with the employment assessment that you did using questionnaire. So if that is actually a valid method of assessing people's attitude, you will see a strong correlation between what you assessed and what you are now observing as far as their attitude is concerned. So that is predictive validity. So we've talked about reliability testing of a questionnaire. A house table is the question. If you use the questionnaire over and over, are you likely to get the same information, the same response, or similar response, for example? So there are different ways of assessing that. You can do that by doing a test, retest, reliability test. Test, retest, reliability test. Time. Maybe you administer it for the first time today, then after 10 days or after 2 weeks, you go back to the same people, the same participants, and give them the same questionnaire. And now you compare their responses. Under normal circumstances, if the questionnaire is a stable questionnaire, the responses are supposed to correlate. If the first one gives high satisfaction, for example, overall high satisfaction rating, the one you administer the second time should also give overall high satisfaction. So that is test, retest, reliability. So when you have a correlation of 0.82, that correlation is good enough. It's considered the test, retest reliability is okay. Then internal consistency. This measures whether items that are supposed to measure the same construct actually correlate with each other. So that is questions that are contained under the same section. For example, questions that are assessing attitude. Are they correlating with each other? Ideally, they are supposed to agree with each other. So that is the subject matter of what? Internal consistency. So for example, in a safety evaluation questionnaire, a worker that answers strongly agree to a question asked on whether he feels safe with the working area should also agree with a question that asks on what? Feelings of safety with the work equipment. So that means they are moving in the same direction. If I ask you now, do you feel safe in your work area, and you say yes, then if I also ask you, do you feel safe with the equipment you are using, it should also ideally be what? The response should ideally be what? Yes, I agree, or you feel safe. So that means there is high correlation between the questions, because all of them are assessing what? They are assessing safety. So that is internal consistency, and this is done. Usually the commonest way of assessing it is using Cronbach's alpha. So Cronbach's alpha, when you do it, it also is a form of correlation also. It's from 0 to 1. So a score of 0.9 and above is considered excellent. 0.8 to 0.9 is considered good. Well, 0.7 to 0.8 is acceptable, but below 7 usually is considered not acceptable. So that means you need to revisit your questions. Questions that need to be modified should be modified. Those that need to be removed should actually be removed. And the next is inter-rater reliability. Inter-rater reliability is used when you are assessing. You can use it by giving 2 raters or 2 experts to rate the instrument. Ideally, their rating should correlate with each other. So that means, for example, usually kappa statistics is used. So it's just like the other ones that we talked about. For example, when 2 nurses decide to use a checklist for hand hygiene practice, maybe assessing hand hygiene practice among 10 patients, So by the time you collect the responses from nurse 1 and you collect the responses from nurse 2, the one that nurse 2 administered and the one that nurse 1 administered, when you subject them to correlation or kappa statistics, it should have high correlation of at least 0.78. So that means there is inter-rater reliability. It means the instrument is stable. But when you do it and the responses you are getting, even though it's the same instrument you are using, just that you are using 2 different raters, but the responses you are getting is different, it means it is not reliable. So you have to modify it, or maybe, as the case may be, remove some of the questions. So that is inter-rater reliability. So after this whole thing, after doing your validity test and then reliability test, you now come and make final conclusion. So based on the results of this, you now do what? Items that do not perform well, especially on the item content validity index, you either remove them or you revise them. By the time you do that, you see that the scoring will improve. Items that may confuse respondents, you also need to what? Modify them so that it will not be confusing. Maybe there are questions that you realize for those questions there is no good correlation, and you revisit them, then you realize no, the way the question is stated is not very clear. It can give different meaning to different respondents. So those ones you have to what? Modify them. So that is I think this concludes evaluation of questionnaire. So in conclusion, we should know that a questionnaire should be what? Clear, it should be concise and relevant, and above all, it should be what? Evaluated for validity and reliability. So developing a questionnaire should be a systematic process, just like we mentioned. You know, the considerations, things you need to consider, which mainly has to do with the type of questionnaire you are designing, your target population, whether they are literate or they are not literate, the resources available to you. And then we talked about the format of a questionnaire. Usually it should begin with the affiliation, then title of that questionnaire, then consent statement, then questionnaire identifiers, then the various sections that will address each specific objective of your research. And then finally, we shouldn't forget to appreciate the respondent. And we talked about the do's and don'ts, things that we need to consider whenever we are designing a questionnaire. We mentioned a lot of things. Among those, we said the numbering should be what? Serial, a number. The question should be straightforward, simple. We should start with straightforward questions. The question should be clear. It should be unambiguous. We should not join more than one question in a single variable. We should avoid the use of unnecessary terminologies. We should avoid the use of any acronym or abbreviation that is not defined, and so on and so forth. We've talked about all these things, including avoiding the use of leading questions. And then we talked about evaluating the questionnaire. We said there are 2 major ways by which we evaluate a questionnaire. You either test the validity or the reliability. And the validity, we mentioned various types: first validity, content validity, construct validity, criterion validity, and we've discussed each one of them. And then reliability, which we say has to do with consistency of the questionnaire. And we also mentioned different ways of testing the reliability. We talked about the retest. We talked about the internal consistency, where we say the items, how closely related the items that answer a specific objective, how closely related are they? And we gave example. And so in summary, please, whenever we are designing questionnaire, these are some of the things we need to consider. We should know that before we start, we have to consult widely. Literature, if you do a very good literature search, you might be very lucky to have a standardized questionnaire that has almost all the questions that you want to also put in your questionnaire. So all you need to do is you either adopt it if everything is okay, or you adapt it if there are so many things you need, but then you need to maybe modify some. So I think with this, we end this discussion. If there are a few questions, we address the questions. Please just give me 2 minutes. There is a call that has been coming in and I need to respond. So just give me 2 minutes to, so put your questions together so that
Okay, sir. Well noted. Okay, well noted, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Our dear participant, distinguished
No audio. Me, I'm not hearing anything. Oh, sorry.
Okay, it appears the moderator is offline, probably has been having network challenges from his end. But
yes,
of course, if you are okay, is Sally, are you back?
yes, I'm back. Sorry, apologies.
Okay.
It has been a battle between me and network since. So, as I was saying before, Prof comes back, we have an important dignitaries among us who has been with us almost from the beginning of this session. Is not any other person but one of our professor, Professor Sule Saidu. Is a professor of radiology and also a former provost of College of Health Sciences, Usmanu Danfodio University. Is a current director of Usmanu Danfodio University Consultancy Services. Prof, sir, you are welcome. Thank you for finding time out of your busy schedule to be with us this evening. Prof, sir,
Thank you very
I don't.
much.
We are
I'm
welcome.
actually in transit from Ibadan to Lagos. I'm currently at the airport. It's my pleasure to be with you. I'm
Thank
happy
you so
that
much.
this is happening. We're improving human capacity. And
Thank you,
I'm
Prof.
sure that the residents and every other person that is able to join will find it very useful. I want to thank my college exam officer. He was the college exam officer when I was provost, and he still is. Your resource person for today, Professor Abibullah. And I thank the president of ARD, Dr. Mushtaba, for sending the link to me. I wish you all the
Thank you
best.
so much,
I hope
sir.
to
We
be able
wish
to
you.
join in subsequent ones. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, sir, and we wish you a safe flight, sir, to your destination.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. Sir. It is our
All right.
privilege
Thank
and
you very
honor
much.
to have you in our midst. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you all.
Safe journey.
All the
Thank you.
best. All right. Thank you.
in the comment section that once Prof come back, he will address them. Then the first questions was from Dr. Danjuma from ARD Taraba. And sorry, when the network logged me again. So let's exercise patience. Let Prof come back so that he can take care of the questions.
Dr. Salu, it seems he's still online.
Okay,
Prof.
yes,
Adibullah,
Prof.
I can see him. He's still online.
Yeah, he's online. He said we should give him.
I see. I understand.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Yes, he's online. He said we should give him
back.
like 2 minutes to answer your call.
Yes, I'm back. There were calls that kept coming in when so I kept rejecting the calls. So that's why I had to go on. But I'm back now. So if there are questions, maybe let's address some of the questions.
Okay, Prof, are you back?
Yes, I'm back.
Okay, welcome, sir. In your absence, we had in our present Professor Sule Said, former provost, and he appreciates your effort in facilitating this session this evening.
So
so we
thank
have
you, sir. Yes, go ahead.
So
Hello,
the first question
Prof.
was from
Hello, Prof.
Dr.
I can hear you
Danjuma.
greeting me.
Okay.
I didn't know that you had moved out of the place, but
yes,
welcome
sir.
back.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
I just appreciated you for agreeing to be the resource person for the session today.
So
and
thank you, sir.
I want to thank you for doing such a wonderful job for our residents and for every other person able to attend.
Thank you, sir. I really
Yes, I acknowledge that you are the college exam officer when I was provost, and you still are.
So thank you, sir. And
Yes,
you are
yes.
welcome, sir. I didn't know
All
you
right.
were
Okay. Well done.
actually. I didn't know you joined. So
Okay. Okay.
Yes,
It's all
sir.
right. Thank you. All the best.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Jazakallah khairan.
I mean, okay, sir. Sir, the first question in the comment section said he said, wonderful presentation. He said, in checking the validity of a questionnaire, do you apply all the various validity tests or you can choose one, e.g. just the face validity? Then he now asks again, how do you get these experts? Will they offer this service free? If no, won't it increase the cost of the thesis? That's the first question, sir.
Okay. Okay, so maybe let me should I address it one by one, or you want to read some of the questions so that I address them? Maybe read 3 or 2, then I address them.
Okay.
That ones, yes.
Okay, sir. The second question. Okay. The second question is, thank you, Prof, sir. How are we to report the reliability test in our thesis? And is it all types of the reliability test that should be captured? And lastly, can we get the slide? Thank you, Prof, sir.
Okay.
These are the questions.
Okay, so the line is breaking. Yeah. Doctor, are you reading another question? Because I can't hear you. The line is breaking. Hello?
I think he has a network issue. Dr. Alpha, I don't know if you can see the questions.
Yes, Prof, I think those are the two questions in the chat box, but let me still go through them again. Yes.
No, I think
okay.
I got the first question said.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. It's two questions I think that were read.
Yes, the second question, Prof. The second question says, thank you, my Prof, sir. How are we to report the reliability in our thesis? And is it all types of reliability tests that should be captured? And lastly, can we get the slide? Thank you. I think these are the questions I'm also seeing from my end here.
Okay.
Yes, Prof.
All right. So, first of all, we mentioned 4 types of reliability tests, and some we even mentioned because I think the question is even related to first validity, that can one restrict it to first validity only. But you remember when I talked about the first validity, I mentioned one of its drawback, that it's subjective. An expert might rate a questionnaire as okay based on the first value, while another expert, the same questionnaire, might rate it as not okay. So that means you cannot rely on first validity alone. The one that is commonly used in practical terms is the content validity. So at least, even if you are not going to do all the validity testing, because it is your specific objectives that determines which validity or the extent of validation you are going to do. But at least the content validity should be evaluated, where you look at the item content validity index or the scale content validity index. So it is not that you must do all, but at least you are expected to do at least that content validity index to be sure that the things you are putting in your questionnaire are relevant and can answer your specific objectives. Then the issue of how to get experts. Usually, for now, we are having this discussion because there are residents who are preparing for their part 2. And there is no way you write your part 2 work without a supervisor or an assessor. So for now, these are the experts. Then in addition, all the consultants in your department are part of the experts. So it means when you design the questionnaire, you are expected to, even before presenting, like in my own system, in my own center, what we usually do in our department is, before a dissertation, the proposal is sent out, the resident will defend it before everybody. So all the consultants, including the residents, everybody will listen and will give his own contribution. So usually before that even happens, the resident will share it with all the consultants and other lecturers, senior lecturers within the department, and sometimes even residents, some senior registrars that have passed through that process. So for them to look at it. So they are the experts that are being referred to. The supervisors and all other senior persons, whether in the department or even outside the department. You can even email the questionnaire to someone in another center who is also an expert in that field, depending on your department. So, like when I was doing my own, I know I sent my questionnaire to, even beyond our department, I sent it to other centers. And beyond that, the assessors also looked at it and made their own input. So these are the experts that we are referring to. And then how to report reliability. So it depends. First of all, you have to state the type of reliability test you conducted. If it is test retest, so you have to state that a test retest reliability test was conducted and the questionnaire was found stable based on so because there is high correlation of so you put it. So it is very clear that yes, you have done it. In fact, you are expected to briefly describe how you did it, but at least you should state that you conducted it and it was found stable after repeating it on the same study participant using the same questionnaire. And then the commonest one is the internal consistency, in which Cronbach's alpha is the one that is generally used. So you have to state that internal consistency was tested using Cronbach's alpha. And then you put the value that you got. And then you state that it was considered valid. So that is just a simple statement. It's not like you have to write. So whichever one you carried out, you state it, and then you mention the value that you got for it, and then your final conclusion based on that value, whether it was valid or not valid. You can even say the initial one had so value of which was considered not valid, so it was improved by modifying some of the questions or by removing some of the questions or by adding some questions. And after that, another test was carried out and the value of so was obtained, which was considered valid. And so there's a simple statement. So that is so just the major one that you need to, usually for reliability, is the internal consistency that is most important. Most reviewers will ask you to put the Cronbach alpha coefficient value. And then for the validity test, mostly is the content validity index that people expect to see, that at least you have conducted that one. And then the slides, I think there is no problem. I can let you have the slides. So I think the organizers will get the slides and then they will share it using the appropriate medium. Yeah, so thank you.
Okay, thank you
okay.
so much.
Oh, all right. Carry on, sir. Carry on, okay, Dr. Salim.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Alpha. So someone said the cost of the expert service, is it free?
Well, I don't know. Has anyone ever been charged by his supervisor? Because as far as I know, it is the commonest, the ones that are available to everyone, they are free because it constitutes your supervisors, the consultants in your department. But if you need a different, because I believe you don't really have to go to the extent of getting someone who you have no connection with, no prior knowledge of, because those are the ones that may likely say, okay, you have to pay. And in any case, I don't see anyone asking. So generally it's free. But if someone in his own wisdom or whatever feels, no, you have to pay so that you value what he is going to, the services he's going to give you, well, that is a different thing. But generally it's free because it is done by consultants, the supervisors, and the assessors that someone is using.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof. Sir. Thank you for finding time to be with us this evening, despite giving you a short notice yesterday. We appreciate, on behalf of the Executive Council and the Supreme Congress of the Association of Resident Doctors, ably led by our infatigable President, Dr. Mujitaba Umar. We really appreciate your time, sir. For the slide, I have just put my phone number on the chat box. For anyone interested can actually chat me up on WhatsApp, and once Prof make it available for us, we will share it on the WhatsApp group, the Research Methodology Workshop WhatsApp group. And Prof, sir, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to have these slides, sir. We really appreciate. Mr. President, I don't know whether you have anything to say before we bring this session to close.
Thank you so much, Dr. Salih Shaba. I think everything has been said. I want to join you to appreciate Prof sincerely for the efforts. We so much appreciate. We also appreciate the participants, our ICT person, Dr. Abdulkadir Katagun, consultant family dentistry, who has been helping us all through the years. We sincerely appreciate you and each and everyone. Thank you so much, Prof.
Okay, so welcome and bye everyone. So Dr. Salu, I will share it with you so that you get it across.
Thank you so much, Prof. Sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And our participants from different centers across the country, thank you. And we see you next week, Saturday, for the subsequent series. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. All right.